Hello, everyone. It's me, Lauren Lefkowitz. I am live and I'm really excited about it. I have not gone live in quite some time, and I'm happy to be reintroducing myself and my live streams, and really excited to be here today to tell you my story. I haven't told my story in quite some time, and those of you who have known me through the whole path of my um, all of the changes that I've made and all of the transformations that I've made for myself, and as well those of you who have known me since I started my business, you know my story and you know sort of where I came from. And every time I meet new people and I tell them my story, there's like a little gasp that I forget to pause for, because I forget that people don't know my story, and I forget that some of the pieces and parts are surprising. And so I'm excited to come on here, tell you a little bit about how a vacuum cleaner, a wood floor, a lamp, and a pair of socks ended up changing my life. And while I don't recommend the exact path that I took from there to here, I do recommend following a path. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit about me because, and hey, Kat, thanks for joining. I'm going to tell you a little bit about me because I want you to see if you see parallels in your story with my story. Very short story, wouldn't be here today if I hadn't had an encounter with a vacuum cleaner, a wood floor, a lamp, and a pair of socks. And my particular story has those unique factors and some more factors to come. But every time I meet somebody who has a similar story, even though the plot line is different to mine, it's like this surprising and beautiful connection to know that we're all sort of in this together. We all have really similar experiences. When you take out the specific plot lines, the themes of our stories are often so similar. So I'm going to start by telling you what happened to me and how I got to next week. I'm moving to Lewis Beach, Delaware, from a vacuum cleaner, a wood floor, a lamp, and a pair of socks. So if you know me now, you know that I have a pretty laid back life. I have a pretty fun kind of schedule. I work when I decide to work. I work with amazing clients who choose me and I choose them. I am mainly executive coach to individual people who have gotten to a point in their career where they think they should be like so happy and so excited and really thriving because they have whatever the things were that they want: the money, the title, the job, the industry, the cool company, the boss that they thought they were going to freaking love. And instead they wake up every day and sort of take a big deep breath and say, this is fine. This is fine. Because they think it has to be fine. This is the path you've chosen. This is the way your career has gone. So if it's not fine, then what do you do? And so these are the clients that I work with who get to this middle point. The other thing that my clients have in common with each other and with me is this life of workaholism, corporate people-pleasing workaholism life, where you started working one day, you started raising your hand for different things. You got really flattered when people told you you could be on their team or help with their thing. And then one day you realized you didn't know how to stop raising your hand. And so my clients tend to be overworkers and overcommitters and not willing to break their commitments. And so they will work for as long, as many hours, as much time as it takes to be pleasing. And in it, they sort of lose their freedom and their livelihood outside of work and forget who they are. And that was me. The day before I had my encounter with a vacuum cleaner, I can tell you for sure I was an 80+ hour a week workaholic. I had just at that point, I had just come off this cycle where I was interim managing our marketing department. My background was 20 years of HR. I was interim managing our marketing department, and I had just come off that assignment, and was already working an unreasonable amount of hours, and was already having my hands dipped into other departments that weren't HR in an unreasonable way that didn't really make sense for HR, but made sense for me because I was good at work and I volunteered for things. And I'm working from home on this one snowy day, and I have my Roomba vacuum running. I was in a place in my life where I wanted change. I didn't know what I wanted, and I didn't know how to create change from where I was sitting. So instead of actually creating change in my work and personal life, I was creating change at home. And I had just cleaned my condo. I had purged a whole bunch of stuff. I had donated, thrown away, reorganized. Everything was like alphabetized or sorted by color. My underwear drawer was super tidy, which is like, I think, a drawer for a lot of people that just gets like a mishmash of undies and socks. And like that was, everything was folded perfectly and just kind of hanging out there. Hey, Katie, thanks for joining. And so here I was making my home a perfect place for me so that I could sort of clear space for changing my career. Now, I knew how to make things different in my home. I knew how to clean. I knew how to purge. I knew how to donate. I had actually worked with an organizer a few years before who helped me really get like a philosophy around how to keep my condo the way that I wanted it. And so I had the lessons there, and it was just me counting on me to do something for me. And while I'm working from home on this one snowy day, I'm running my Roomba vacuum to get into all the nooks and crannies and corners to get myself to a place where everything felt the cleanest and tidiest it could possibly be. And hey, Vaughn, thanks for joining. And you said, I love a good purge when I'm feeling stuck. I'm a decluttering queen. I love a good purge when I'm feeling stuck if the intention is to get me unstuck. It's not great when I use it as an excuse to not do the things that I actually like want to or should or could be doing. And I think that's where I was like perfecting and perfecting and perfecting to try to get myself to this place where everything around me was perfect. So of course my imaginary dream job would come into play and just work out for me. What I didn't have really ready for after I finished my cleaning and purging was like, what are my steps going to be? How am I going to figure out how to figure out what I want next? Well, the universe had some other plans in mind anyway. So I wasn't going to get to the point where I was looking for a job, because instead, while my Roomba vacuum was running around my condo, I saw it headed for the last item that I had not yet donated. It was this purple glass lamp that I absolutely loved, and I had no place for it. My home, I'm not in my home right now, and you'll learn more about that in a little while, but my home is all earth tones, oranges, browns, grays, greens. And I had this purple lamp that I had picked up in a little shop, and I just loved it. And for years, I kept moving it around my condo, trying to find a place for it. And I never could find a place for it. The only place that it might have gone was in my kitchen, where the walls were like a dark eggplant color. But like, who has a table lamp in their kitchen, right? When you don't have an eat-in kitchen. So I see the Roomba going towards the door, the front door, where on a cabinet was this glass lamp waiting to be donated. So it was unplugged. So the lamp is hanging down, or the lamp cord is hanging down. The Roomba is heading for the lamp cord. And I have a dog with paws that are, barefoot, right? Barefoot dog. And I'm picturing the Roomba catching the lamp being pulled down, the glass shattering everywhere, the dog running over because there was a noise, glass in my dog's feet, me trying to chaotically figure everything out. So you have that flash, right? In an emergency, like I described it in 30 seconds, but it happened in half a second. And of course, my reaction was to try to prevent this impending incident. And so I jump up out of my seat. I run across my floor, which is a wood floor, and I am wearing socks. And instead of catching the Roomba, I caught air when I transitioned from carpet to wood floor, slid in my socks across the room, tried to reach out in front of me to catch a table that I was not close enough to, and slammed down face first. Somehow I did not hit my face on the floor because I really went like straight to horizontal, but I did not hit my face on the floor. My arms were outstretched in front of me because I was trying to reach for the table. And so they went over my head when I fell down. And I sat myself up from lying down and I thought, wow, that was close. And then I tried to stand up and I realized that somehow, even though I'd gone from lying down to sitting, that my arms were not supporting me to stand up. And the next thing I knew, I was phoning a friend in a very comical way. And this is, a beautiful story of trying to figure out how to use the arms that were not usable to get to my phone, to call my friend, who thankfully had a key to my apartment, who then was able to come in, help me decide what to do, which there really wasn't a decision-making process. It was like, when is Lauren going to be ready to call an ambulance? Because I could not use my arms. Well, it turned out I broke both of my shoulders. And I broke them pretty badly. And having no shoulders to use means you don't have anything but the lower half of your arms to use. So instead of finishing cleaning my apartment and moving on to the next project, I found a way instead to just skip out of life for a little while. Having two broken shoulders and being a person who lives only with a dog who is not really all that helpful with anything except for love and snuggling, meant that I had to first stay in the hospital for several days because I had to have one of my arms repaired. And two, then move into rehab centers because when you can't use either of your shoulders, you can't reach your mouth to feed yourself. You can't reach your glasses to take them off and put them on. And like, worst of all, you can't dress yourself. You can't go to the bathroom by yourself. You can't wipe yourself. You can't shower by yourself. You can't close the cabinet that the rehab center left open next to you that you really want to stand up and reach up and close because your shoulders don't work. Kat says, oh no, I would have no clue what to do. Yeah, it was, I'm a good and emergency person and I didn't know what to do. I think I had gone like straight into shock. And so I had the wherewithal to phone a friend, and thankfully such a good friend, who was so patient while she waited for me to figure out that I needed to go to the hospital. Like, I wasn't quite prepared for that. And that friend was like my absolute rock during that time because she checked my mail. She came and visited me. She ran errands for me. She did all of the things that I needed done while I was recovering. And the joke from my friends was literally, oh, look, who can't be a hand raiser anymore? Which really pointed out to me that it wasn't just me thinking I was tired from working a lot. It wasn't just me thinking that like I raised my hand too much and someday maybe I should figure out how to not do that so much. It was coworkers, it was friends around me who all saw the me that I had become, which was the workaholic me, the people-pleasing me who wanted to serve everybody all of the time and did it at the expense of who I was and how I wanted things to be. And that was in part a compulsion to please. And it was in part an avoidance of trying to figure out like what I wanted, because I'd gotten to this midpoint in my career and like, how do you change that stuff? Interestingly, I was a coach at that point on the side. I coached people internally where I worked as well, but I was coaching on the side for people who were referred to me who wanted to change careers. And I 100% believed in them and their ability to change careers. And I was really good at coaching people through that, helping them adapt their resumes, helping them figure out what they were good at, helping them figure out how to get over their own barriers to entry into whatever they wanted to do next. But I didn't believe in it for myself, because I believed I had chosen this career as an HR executive. This was it. This was how things were going to be. This was what I had chosen, and I would retire someday. And, you know, hopefully find something I enjoyed then. So fast forward, I returned to work with a promise to myself. I have now recovered enough that I can spend 15 minutes or so here and there typing on the computer without fatiguing my arms. And then I would take a break. I could attend meetings virtually. And this was a time just before we were all virtual. So we were still figuring out how virtual worked. So there were a lot of calls, conference room calls, where everybody was in the same room and I was on the phone and I'd be saying, "What did you say? What did you just talk about? Can somebody repeat that?" And I had to really figure out how I was going to go back to work and how I was going to now like actually create the life that I wanted. So I went back to work with a promise. I was only going to work 40 hours a week, no matter what. That's how I was going to do it. I was no longer going to be working 80 to 100 hours a week. I was ready to go back. I had this like 4-month break, 3.5 months of which I really didn't work at all, except for the one time that they called me while I was high on a lot of different pain medications, because redheads have really high tolerance for pain medications. And they called me to do the compensation plan for the year. So hope it went well, because I told them I was on a lot of drugs and they still took my advice, but nobody else knew how to run compensation. So anyway, so I come back to work and I've got this like absolute promise to myself. I will not work more than 40 hours a week. I kept that promise to myself for 1 week because I didn't have a plan. I didn't have a plan. I didn't create any support systems for myself. I didn't have anybody that I even told who could be like my encourager and my person who would say like, "You can do this. I'm behind you. I know this is hard. I've emerged from this," or "I want to do this too. Let's buddy up and do it." I just kept it quiet because I was embarrassed that I did not know how to stop working 80 plus hours a week. I was embarrassed that I didn't know what I wanted to do next. I was embarrassed that as a high achiever, as a person who did everything for everybody all of the time, as the problem solver for the oddball problems that came up at work, that I couldn't figure out what I wanted and what I wanted to do and how I wanted to do it, felt shameful to me, like absolutely shameful to me. And so I just hid it. And within 6 weeks or so, I was back to 80 to 100 hours a week. And I was overusing my arms. I was doing too much. I am a person who lives with chronic illness, and I have for almost 20 years. I was absolutely wiping myself out. I was using spoons that I didn't have. If you don't know the spoon theory, go Google it. And if you've got any kind of chronic illness or chronic issues, I think it will resonate with you. And so I just was right back to it. And I had broken my shoulders in January of that year. And by September, October of that year, I just was like, my skin was gray. I was in full burnout. I was angry at myself for not doing anything about any of this, for having this, whether you believe it's a sign from the universe or a coincidence or whatever it was, from having this incident that took away my ability to do anything, being then allowed to come back into my life and making my choice be, I'm going back to the way it was. I was disappointed in myself. And then the new year came. When the new year came, this was 2020. We all had this big surprise of COVID. And at the time, I was back to full-time in my job. I had taken over our finance department because our head of finance had left. And so I had taken over the people management and some of the functional management of our finance department. And our CEO took on the sort of financial reporting management. I was managing internal people and consultants. We also had a director who reported to me leave, and we decided not to replace her. So we redistributed some of her work, and about 50% of her work landed on me and my team. And the pandemic was starting. And I remember at the beginning of the pandemic that people were starting to set up Zoom meetings. Just groups of people were setting up Zoom meetings. And at that point, I was not really on any social media. I was on Facebook, but I wasn't really on LinkedIn. I had a profile. And so I was just looking for like anybody who understood the awful feeling that I had of like, I don't like what I'm doing anymore. Now it's even harder because we're in a pandemic and everybody's counting on HR to know everything. And I joined a Facebook group for HR departments of one, which I was at the time. And they had a Zoom meeting, and I joined the Zoom meeting. And this was at the time when we were all pretty new to using Zoom on a regular basis. So we were more staring at ourselves in the screen than we were looking at other people and making eye contact with people, because it was so foreign to just see ourselves be on screen. And in that meeting, I noticed in my own face that I looked so tired, that I looked like I was like a walking dead person. Like I was pale, my skin was gray, I looked tired, I looked sad. And I felt it so much when I saw my reflection, when I saw my Zoom box. I could tell that I was coming to the end of my ability to tolerate where my life was. And I remember saying in that meeting, I really wish that I could do more coaching and less working. But I don't think I would really make money as a coach. And two of the women in the group said, I coach. I just left my job and I coach full time. And the other woman said, I coach and I'm going to leave my job soon. And it suddenly clicked with me that there were people out there who were just like me, who were workaholics, who were people pleasers, who were at some point trying to do it all alone. And now they were finding community in a group of other people who were in similar situations. And I was like, how did I not realize, as like a smart human, how did I not realize that there were other people out there like me, that I wasn't like the only human in the world who worked too much and said yes too much and was burning out from it and was scared to tell people I was burning out from it. And that was my lead in to recognizing that I could do something different. And it wasn't magic from there. It wasn't like, oh, that was the day I realized and my life immediately changed. And now I'm an executive coach and I'm living the life that I dreamed and blah, blah, blah. There is no like magic overnight one thing that did it. But I will tell you, the thing that changed my whole life was that day realizing that I wasn't by myself. I was choosing to be by myself, but I didn't have to be by myself. And I started joining more networking groups and I started networking with people. And I called somebody one day who had been an acquaintance of mine to find out about getting my coaching certification, because while I'd been coaching for about 15 years, the kind of coaching I'd been doing was more facilitative coaching. Goal setting, objective setting, support, removing barriers, sort of more of the logistical, tactical kind of coaching. And I wanted to know more. And as a high achiever, I wanted the credentials. So I called somebody I knew who had gotten her coaching credentials and asked her how she had done it. And I'm taking notes and I'm writing it down and I'm asking her how much it cost and how much time did you have to spend. And then I said to her, oh, this all sounds so great. I would love to do it, but I don't think I can because I already work 80 plus hours a week and that's not going to change. And the good coach that she is, she said, if you say so, in like a really non-judgmental, really supportive kind of way. She told me that I was deciding for myself that I only had the option to work 80 plus hours a week. And that was when I realized that I needed a coach and that I could have a coach and that there could be someone out there who was more clever about me than me, not because she told me, if you say so, but because she reflected that she noticed that I said so, that I was making the rules for my own life and that I could keep doing that. If I decided I was going to work 80 plus hours a week, yeah, that's what I was going to do. So instead of getting off the phone with her and signing up for a coaching certification program, I hired her as my coach. She was my first executive coach. And when I started working with her and started testing out how I could make my life easier, make my work easier, start setting boundaries, start deciding what do I actually want to do? What do I not want to do? By the end of that year, by the end of 2020, I was down to 50 or 60 hour work weeks. I was getting closer to 40. And then 2021 came around and I said, I absolutely want to become a coach. I want to become a full-time coach and I got to figure out how to do that. And Kat, you're absolutely right. Our words and beliefs are so powerful. Like what we say about ourselves and about what we're allowed to have and about what we're not allowed to have is so powerful. We are what we believe and we are who we tell ourselves that we are. And hiring that first coach helped me recognize a lot of the language I was using around myself and who I am. I have a client right now who is doing an exercise in noticing. She is just noticing how she talks to herself. She's noticing how she says what she wants and then she butts herself out of what she wants. She is noticing what the people around her say to her and how she internalizes that. Does she dismiss things that are said to her that are nice? And does she internalize things that are said to her that are not as supportive? And it's a really powerful way to just hear how you talk to yourself. So after I had hired this executive coach to sort of help me, stop putting barriers around myself and realized that I did want to be a full-time coach, I started my coaching certification at the end of 2020. I hired my business coach, who's here, Katie McManus, amazing business coach. I hired my business coach to help me start my company, Fine as a Trap Coaching. At the beginning of our first call, I told Katie that within 5 years, I probably maybe wanted to run a coaching business. And she said, how about a year? And then it ended up being that 6 months later, I was ready to leave my corporate job. And today, here I am in my friend's basement because that same business coach who has now become one of my best friends and I met up for a weekend in Lewis Beach, Delaware, just sort of on a whim, like, hey, let's meet up for a weekend somewhere we can both drive to. We went to Lewis Beach, Delaware. As soon as I drove into town, I said, I feel like I live here. And everywhere we walked around town, I said, I could see myself coming to this coffee shop. I love this pond. Oh my gosh, this is the bench and the tree and the pond that I imagined finding to like come and sit and read. And I can never find anything like that in my neighborhood. And I fortunately, very fortunately, was with the right person because Katie is among my most spontaneous friends, my most empowered friends, and I'm laughing at this comment from Katie about being in my friend's basement, which I will get back to momentarily. But Katie is one of my most spontaneous friends and one of my most like, yeah, do that, like cheerleadery, to her people kinds of friends. And I said, someday I want to live here. And Katie said, why don't you? And that led me to deciding to move there. And so in May was when we went to Lewis. And in June, I called a realtor. In July, I sold my condo in 4 days. Thanks, universe. And then I closed on my condo in August, which was too early to be looking for a year-round place in a beach town during the summer. And so I moved into my friend's house. And I'm living with my friend Mary Jo and working in her basement and sleeping in her guest room. And it's been like we've been at camp. It's been so much fun. And so Katie, things have not deteriorated. I am in my friend's basement, but in a very healthy way. I've not been kidnapped. You don't need a newspaper with the date on it to show proof of life. This is me here now. And next week, I'm moving to Lewis Beach, Delaware. And I never would have been able to do that if I hadn't found balance, joy, excitement about my life in this way. When I was working 80 to 100 hours a week, absolutely would not have occurred to me to even think about relocating. It absolutely would not have been on my radar that I could live anywhere other than where I had lived for the past 15 years, 20 years. And now that I have so many choices in my life, now that I have had a few different kinds of coaching, now that I have been to therapy in a really intensive way and dealt with a lot of the trauma that I hadn't dealt with, both from my accident and from complex PTSD, from things that have happened over longer periods of time. Now that I've done that work and I continue to do that work, first of all, I'm super committed to myself. I'm super committed to my joy because it makes me a better coach. It makes me a better leader. It makes me better at running my business, at taking care of my clients, at deciding like fully, yes, I want to do this thing, or no, I don't want to do that thing. And it's made me really appreciate every time I make a decision that serves me. And some of those decisions have been really big things like selling my condo and moving to an entirely new place. Some of those have been smaller things like going back to being a redhead after I had been blonde for a bunch of years, because I feel brighter when I have a brighter color hair, and everything in between. And now I'm moving to Lewis next week, which I couldn't have done without all of this coaching, all of this therapy, all of this community building. I have an incredible network of people that I know from individual networking calls, from going to group things virtually and in person, from just building community with the university I went to, with different groups that I've been in, and saying yes to the way that I want to live. And Yvonne, you said, sounds like you also learned to lean on friends, which is such an important life lesson. We only thrive together, never alone. It's so true. And I think that for a lot of us who find ourselves as, or define ourselves as achievers and define ourselves as helpers and people who serve other people, that we forget that we can have friends who also do that, and that we can sort of be in that space together and recognize that we also get to lean on each other. We also get to just say, I need help, and not be saying like, oh, I need help, and in exchange, I'll give you this or I'll give you that. That we can have these really like reciprocal feeling friendships and networking relationships and communities and coaches and clients who just really complete our circle of support and our circle of people. So if you have been watching this, or if you're watching it on the replay and you think like, oh my gosh, I'm the workaholic she's describing. I'm the people pleaser she's describing. I'm the person who doesn't have any boundaries at work. I'm the person who's working 12-hour days, 15-hour days, who hasn't taken a vacation in 6 months. This is your sign. that it doesn't have to be that way. This is your sign to reach out to me, set up a strategy call, or even set up a call where you tell me, like, I don't want you to sell me on your services. I just want to tell somebody. I just want to tell somebody that this is hard. I just want to share with somebody that it's really hard being alone. I will never pressure people to work with me. I think everybody should work with me. There's your pressure. But I will never tell you on a coaching strategy call that you can't get off this call without making a decision, because it is really hard to decide that it's your time to start taking care of you. It's also incredibly powerful to decide that. And it's incredibly powerful and transformational to do this work. So whether your dream is to move to the beach town that you never even knew existed, whether your dream is to just like double your money or like your job more or get away from your toxic workplace or your toxic boss, or whether your dream is like, I don't even know what my dream is. It's just not this. It's just not this thing that I'm doing right now. Get on a call with me. Say it out loud. Give yourself that opportunity to say it out loud. If you decide you want to do the work with me, we will talk about that. If you decide you don't want to do the work with me, then I will simply congratulate you for saying out loud, things are not the way you want them. You want your career to be different, and you're aware of it now. Have an amazing day. Thank you so much for sticking with me through this, and I'll see you next time. Bye.